take any action that could lead to widespread violence. Chris?
Thank you. Richard Engel is over in Islamabad. Andrew Mitchell is NBC's chief foreign affairs correspondent, and P.J. Crowley is a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. Andrea, you first. What's the best we can hope to come out of this turmoil in our allied country over there?
Very difficult to say, because the U.S. had hoped to broker a deal between Benazir Bhutto and Musharraf for some sort of an enlarged government, a coalition government, if you will, to enlarge the democracy. That has not worked, and now she is in a position where she can no longer afford to negotiate politically with Musharraf, not after the steps that he has taken. She will have no political future at all if she now begins to deal with him again. So at this stage, they need to get him to take off his uniform and reverse what he has done against the courts, let the Supreme Court justices come back, the 17 that he's fired. No sign that that's really going to happen. They had resisted letting the president call him, Chris, until today. They were withholding that as the maximum leverage. How that is an important leverage, it's hard to imagine, but they had so little leverage. We're withholding the presidential call until today. A very tough phone call from George Bush to Musharraf to tell him, you've got to take off the uniform, you've got to reverse all of this. But that said, they're not yet willing to withhold, billions of dollars in aid.
PJ, it seems to me that back when the Shah was tottering, we said totter some more as our advice to him. Give in to the streets. Taking off the uniform me as a proposal, because he's head of the military. If he takes off his uniform, he's no longer head of the military. He has no claim as commander-in-chief of that country anymore, does he?
No, he doesn't. And this is a conundrum, as Andrew just said. I think Musharraf has crossed a line here, and I think quietly we should be talking to the Pakistani military about engineering a soft landing and having Musharraf step aside entirely and clear the way for new leadership in Pakistan, because there's a conflict between the Supreme Court on the one hand that was prepared to rule that he was ineligible to be reelected as president, even as the president and commander-in-chief. So at some point in time, I think Musharraf has become part of the problem. He's no longer part of the solution. We say we're for democracy as a stated policy in fighting terrorism, but we end up still using ally and dictator in the same sentence.
Here's Benazir Bhutto, an interview we had right here in Hardball back several years ago. To get a look at her.
I would like to see Washington start with democracy in Pakistan. I mean, Pakistan is a very important country. It's the second largest Muslim country, and what happens in Pakistan has an effect in the rest of the Muslim world. And the Muslim people have to choose between Osama bin Laden's call for dictatorship and for violence as a tool to somehow empower ordinary Muslims, and the call of Democrats who feel that empowerment comes through a pluralistic society and the rule of law.
Andrea, how do we have any way to conceal or control those weapons over there, those nuclear weapons? They're in the hands of the military. Who's ever head of the military's got those weapons in their hands. Are we going to support the military if it holds those weapons, or are we going to support Benazir Bhutto as she tries to get control of them as well as the head of the country?
Well, I think there are already connections between the U.S. and the military. There is a Deputy Army Chief of Staff, Ashfaz Kiani, General Kiani. There's talk already that he may be the next step, some sort of a transitional government. So clearly there are back-channel conversations going on. They seem to be fairly confident at this stage, despite what one of the generals said today here at the Pentagon, that they seem to be fairly confident right now about the security of the nuclear weapons. But obviously, if the government were to collapse completely and Islamicists were to take over, that would be a completely different situation. As for Bhutto, she has been America's best hope for a transition in Pakistan. According to this administration, she's had very close connections and many conversations with people in the administration before she went back. I talked to her over the weekend after she landed back in Karachi from Dubai, and she had said that they will protest this martial law. She's not going to back down now, she says. And they are planning this enormous protest on Friday, despite what, as Richard reported, the appeals from Washington to pull back and try to not risk what could be a very dangerous situation.
Is she truly a kleptomania, a kleptocrat, someone who steals money when she gets in power, or is that one of those South Asian deals where they always use the power of the judiciary to put these charges against people who are out of power?
There are people on all sides who have been making the case pro and against Bhutto. I've gotten to know her a little bit, and of course she says that the charges were trumped up against her. There are a lot of allegations that have been made, but right now she has been working very closely with this administration to try to come in and broaden the democracy there. But clearly Musharraf is not prepared to let that happen, and that's why he's been refusing to give up the power base that you and PJ have been talking about.
PJ, who do we put our money on if you had to be a tough realist over there? I mean, we know we believe in democracy, and in this case, democracy, where the country has developed in its democracy as Pakistan has been on occasion, I should say. Is it a good bet to go with the people's will over there?
I think so. Certainly we as a country are very unpopular in the Islamic world, in Pakistan. If we're going to win this war on terror, we're going to win it through the battle of ideas, and we have to be practicing what we preach. I think we make a mistake where we personalize relationships with other countries. We've had a Musharraf strategy for 6 years. We've needed a Pakistan strategy, and I think you have to work and focus on building institutions, and that starts with an independent judiciary. So I'm not sure we should tie our future to either Musharraf or Bhutto. We need to balance our aid, help the military. It's the one stable element within Pakistan, but also begin to help Pakistan build stronger institutions of civil society. That's what we're seeing in the streets with the lawyers and the academics and the students. They should be part of the solution, and we need to find a way to support them.
We have not been so lucky with our democratic push over there. I don't want to put down democracy. I love it like we all do, but we saw with Hamas winning on the West Bank. We saw with Ahmadinejad winning in Iran. We saw with Algeria elections along the way, Algerian elections. Democracy tends to go to the most radical forces in the streets. Is Pakistan a case where we might get a pretty decent government through the democratic process? Andrea.
Well, in fact, we've heard a lot of talk in the Bush inaugural and afterward of democracy on the march, and things have not worked out that well, as you pointed out, in all of these places. The difference is that Pakistan has a very large middle class, has this intellectual judiciary, the lawyers, remarkable pictures of the lawyers in the streets, of these men in suit and ties being arrested and tear gassed. You've got Crowley and the rest of the Supreme Court under house arrest. That's where America has to put its bet. And I think there is a future there in Pakistan. But if we stay too long with Musharraf and bet on the wrong horse, we will increase the anti-Americanism and probably radicalize the result. This is very analogous, I think, to what happened with the Shah back in the 70s.
Speaking of middle class, I have never seen such well-dressed protesters. I got to say, Andrea and PJ, those protesters, those lawyers look better dressed than our lawyers. Anyway, thank you very much, Andrea Mitchell and PJ Crowley. Up next, much more on